Up this weekend, it's the fight on the poster. We have the former UFC lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos taking on Ataman Rafael Fiziev in a battle of the Rafael name supremacy. And this is a fight that was originally scheduled back in February of this year. It was supposed to be a 5-round main event of a fight night like it is this weekend. And then they rescheduled that fight. They decided a better choice was Johnny Walker and Jamal Hill. So they put this exact fight on the UFC 272 card to be a 5-round co-main event. Everybody was excited. Fiziev couldn't make the walk. So that's going to happen. Rafael dos Anjos on short notice got a catchweight fight at 160 against Renato Moicano. And in that fight, except for the 5th round, Rafael dos Anjos beat the bejesus out of Renato Moicano, and there were points in that fight where it probably could have been stopped. Only one knockdown, but man, dos Anjos looked really good after a long period away from the fight against Paul Felder to the fight against Moicano.
You know that Wesley Snipes meme where he's got like the pistol and he's crying? That's what it felt like RDA versus Moicano was by the end of it. And I know a lot of people, I can already hear you guys typing away in the comments section. Moicano looked good in the 5th round though. He brought it back a bit. RDA didn't want to seriously hurt him, and I truly do believe that when RDA says it. Like, he had beaten Moicano, and this is hyperbole, but it is the truth, because this is the Hurt Business. You play basketball, you don't play MMA. He beat him within an inch of his life. Like, that was a life-changing type of a beating that reminded me of when Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos fought Benoit Saint Denis. Like, it was a one-sided fight where one guy's swinging the hammer, and the other guy's the nail. But the great thing for RDA is, that really got the bad taste of the Paul Felder performance out of our mouths, because I think just going off the Paul Felder performance going into this fight, Fiziev would be what, like a minus 400 maybe, minus 450? I would expect him to be a much heavier favorite than he is already, because Fiziev fights in a very similar manner to like a younger, more in his prime Paul Felder. He might not go for as many takedowns, but it's very traditional Muay Thai set, it's very traditional kicks, and they get a lot of their success done at the exact same range. The difference is that Paul Felder will almost take half a step more in so he can initiate some of his elbows, whereas Fiziev's much more comfortable at his own boxing range because he has such great trunk movement. That has to be said. Like, that meme that everyone likes of, like, avoiding my girl's BS, and then it's just, like, Fiziev doing the hip thing out of people's kicks. Like, Fiziev does have phenomenal trunk movement when it comes to defending kicks from his opponents. And that's going to be really important against RDA, who has extremely underrated Muay Thai. I think that's fair to say. He's someone who really does well with his own leg kick. He likes going to the body with that kick. The only thing about RDA and his whole kicking repertoire is that he does have to load up for them. I always go back to the Anthony Pettis matchup he had where Joe Rogan is as big of a fan of Anthony Pettis at UFC 185 as anyone can be of any fighter. And he'll land one kick to the body of RDA, and Joe Rogan's like, oh my goodness, look at the speed. And then RDA lands like 10 of the hardest kicks you've ever heard, and he's like, oh, well, he is loading up a little bit on those kicks, which is the truth. But RDA does have a very well-developed kicking game of his own, and that's the range that I do think this fight's going to be contested under the most. Because if RDA's not able to get the takedown very early, he is going to have to just strike with one of the better pure strikers we've seen in the UFC.
And it was so weird once dos Anjos won the title from Pettis at UFC 185, because after that they matched him up against Donald Cowboy Cerrone for the belt in the Fight Night main event, and then after that, another main event. Obviously, that one was a little bit higher profile, and it was during International Fight Week, and one of the craziest first rounds you'll ever see against Eddie Alvarez, and if you've never seen it, go back and watch it. It's amazing.
But that's the one thing, you say high profile, that was the Fight Pass, like, exclusive event of the week. It's been really weird that RDA, after he became champ, is, like, a decent star in the sport, but it felt like he never got the respect he deserved, because like you said, that was always the wild thing. Main event a fight night and then main evented an online-based subscription that had to do with the UFC. It's just so weird that RDA got this credit after his title reign and not during it.
It was very, very weird. But again, when you do look at this one, for dos Anjos, much more willing to initiate the grappling exchanges, and you pick out some of the wins. I mean, the Robbie Lawler win is a pretty darn good example. You look at the Neil Magny win where he's able to finish it on the mat, and that was kind of crazy. You look at it for Fiziev, traditionally great takedown defense, and obviously with kickboxers, you want to go for that. Muay Thai fighters, you want to go for that. But for Fiziev, seems to be like the basis for his training in MMA is just defending those takedowns and not necessarily working his own. And obviously in his last fight, he really did do the same thing that dos Anjos was able to do in his last fight. For Fiziev, The Bobby Green fight, the last round left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and if you look at it for Fiziev, his last 4 fights have all been bonus worthy. He beats Mark Chikasi, that's a fight of the night. He beats Moicano, performance bonus. He has a fight of the night against Bobby Green and a performance bonus against Brad Riddell. But he finishes that fight in the 3rd round, and he kept his composure and his pace, and he wasn't huffing and puffing into the later stages of that fight, getting the finish. So a great win for Fiziev to really prop himself up. And a great win as well for Dos Anjos his last time out. Going a hard 5 rounds, but beating the brakes off Moicano. A guy who, little tough, little rough and tumble at 145, but at 155 he's looked very good. And even Moicano, to his credit, in that 5th round, gained a little bit of stock with the fans. But you look at the losses that Dos Anjos had at 170 pounds, and that's kind of the biggest sticking point for me. Guys like Leon Edwards, guys like Colby Covington.
Just the losses in his career. You don't even have to stick with the welterweight division.
They've been some of the better fighters at that time, and if you pick out those losses that he had at 170, he was getting out wrestled in a lot of those exchanges. So it's interesting to see. I understand 37, almost 38-year-old Dos Anjos taking on, 29-year-old Rafael Fiziev. The other big thing for me in this matchup, and I think this is a giant talking point, Dos Anjos is a guy that spent so much time at King's MMA in Southern California. Before his fight that was originally supposed to be Fiziev, and then it ended up being Moicano, Dos Anjos moved back to Brazil. And not like, we're just doing this training camp in Brazil. Move back to Brazil. So this camp, again, at Novo União. The last camp was at Novo União. Things worked out great with Dede Pederneiras, so good for Dos Anjos. But when you look at it for Fiziev, when he was getting ready for Dos Anjos and when there were those issues of traveling and this and that, and Fiziev couldn't take the fight, he was back at Tiger Muay Thai. He did the little switch up at Sanford MMA for a couple of fights. He went to Tiger Muay Thai, fought Brad Riddell, and then he went to Tiger Muay Thai to get ready for Dos Anjos. For this fight, looks like it's been primarily at Sanford MMA again, so interesting to see how Nick Lentz and crew kind of work in the grappling, but an amazing fight.
RDA has jumped around gyms before. Like, there was times where he didn't even train at King's, he was training at Ruka instead. Like, RDA at a new gym is not a new thing whatsoever. Like, him and Cordero had a falling out and then rekindled. So, him switching gyms to me has never been a big deal, especially at 37.
I just think it's a net positive going to Novo União.
That's what I'm just saying. At 37 years of age, he is so experienced that him at a gym or him at a new gym is probably just a good thing so we can pick up new things from the different training partners. Because a guy like RDA, if he spends the years at the exact same place, he's probably going to be better than the guys he's better than and worse than the guys who he's worse than. I do like the fact that he has been switching it around at this stage of his career just so he doesn't become stale with any singular gym. I think that's a really smart move for him at this stage of his career. This fight, though, is really weird because both fighters have 2 distinctly different stages to them. A fresh RDA versus a fresh Fiziev and a tired RDA versus a tired Fiziev. Tired RDA beats the brakes off tired Fiziev. That is
And this Fiziev's never been in a 5-round fight in MMA either. And that should be said.
RDA barely knew that fights were 3 rounds. Like, he just always assumes, 25 minutes, that's all I'm doing. If Fiziev does get tired, like he did, just even traditionally, like against Brad Riddell, there were some periods throughout that fight where he almost just kind of takes a break just so he can manage himself a little bit better, which shows that he is learning as he progresses through his career, which is a really important thing. But if this fight gets into the 4th and 5th round, I favor RDA more in that situation than I almost do in Fiziev at any other point throughout this fight. The difference is a fresh Fiziev on the feet against a fresh RDA on the feet. Even though RDA is very technical, he's very defensively minded on the feet, he does not have the speed at this stage of his career that Rafael Fiziev does, sorry.
It's Rafael.
Rafael, goodness, I'm getting mixed up here. But I always go back to the combo that he used to finish Renato Moicano on the feet. He goes body, head, body like it's nothing and marches him down. A confident Fiziev is a really hard guy to deal with on the feet, and I do think that he does represent sort of one of these newer MMA fighters to where they do specialize in one area of MMA. Quite clearly, Fiziev is a striker, but he has rounded out his game enough to where I don't immediately fear that Fiziev's going to get taken down by every guy who goes for a takedown. I don't worry about him in the clinch in every situation because, well, really, he can get a lot of his own offense going in some of those situations. So for Fiziev, although he is a specialist, I do feel like he's rounded his game out enough to deal with RDA early on in this fight. I'm just very curious to see what version of Fiziev we get if, let's say, he can defend a lot of those early takedowns. He looks good early on in this fight. He wins some of the battles, but you can tell that the war is shifting towards RDA. That's probably a fight Fiziev does not want to find himself in the middle of the 3rd round. So this is as good of a lightweight fight outside of the top 5 you can honestly put together because it's the experienced, very refined fighter against sort of the more raw but extremely talented man of Fiziev.
And when you look at it, even in the last Fight Night main event, event, you had a couple of guys in somewhat similar situations. Arman Tsarukyan, it's his first 5-round fight. Mateusz Gamrot, he had 6 title fights in the 2 title fight adjacent fights against Norman Park, and Mateusz Gamrot was able to keep his pace throughout that fight. Maybe that's something that you keep in the back of your mind when you do look at this matchup. So, great opportunity for both guys, and it should be noted in the original prediction video, without the Moicano fight for RDA and Fiziev, both of us had Fiziev to get the win. The odds in this fight, RDA open plus 170, still roughly there. Fiziev somewhere in and around a minus 200 favorite. We have a look at the Tapology votes, but Matt, we would... Only thing is the fact that this is the main event. So we always throw these out there in the YouTube community tab at Fight Night Picks. And we threw it out there, Matt. We have 518 total votes, 65% going with Fiziev. We've got the first comment here. I think the experience, well-rounded skill set of RDA could get the job done, but you can't count out Fiziev. That dude is an animal. If it was 3 rounds, I'd leave toward Fiziev, but 5 rounds might be more in RDA's favor. Bill is saying all depends on how RDA approaches this fight. If he comes into grapple, he will probably get the submission by wearing Fiziev out, but if he stands for any length of time with Fiziev, he's going to get put out on a highlight reel. And I'll go with Jake M saying RDA looked damn good his last fight. Could go either way, but the odds for RDA are nice. Matt, I agree with a lot of what the fans are saying over there, pretty much kind of echoing the video. But yeah, I mean, RDA looked great his last time out. Can he replicate some of those performances? Because when you consider it, I mean, his fight against Paul Felder off the couch, RDA wasn't getting ready for Felder. Before that, a loss to Michael Chiesa, got out-grappled at 170, got out-grappled by Leon Edwards, and before that, a submission win over Kevin Lee.
That Leon Edwards fight was hard to watch, and so was the Kamaru Usman one for RDA. I'm just being completely honest.
Oh, yeah.
Usman just ragdolled him. It was insane. It pains me to say this because I love watching RDA fight. I think Fiziev's going to stop him. I really do. I think that RDA has slowed down quite a bit with his own striking, and you can notice that in some of his fights. Even when he's getting out-wrestled, there's less pressure for him to go out there and try to beat guys with his own striking. Even with Paul Felder, he was looking for the takedown on a guy who wasn't even getting ready for that fight, if we're being completely honest. He was getting ready for a triathlon, and he just had a lot of MMA experience to fall back on. It's not that I'm taking anything away from RDA in his last 2 wins. I just think Fiziev is on a different career path than RDA right now. I don't look at RDA as, if he beats Fiziev, maybe he fights Dustin Poirier next. If he beats him, he can get a title shot. But when I think about Fiziev and his future, it's okay, if you beat RDA, you're probably getting like a Gamrot or another one of these young killers, and then if you can beat him, then you'll get one of the more notable names. So for Fiziev, I do think he's much more in his prime right now, and I think that's really the reason I have him in this fight. If RDA was even 3 years younger, if it was the RDA who fought Kevin Lee, I would have an easier time picking him in this fight. I just think he's lost a step since that performance.
The guy who has 44 pro fights isn't in his prime compared to the guy who's had 12 pro fights. No, I agree with you in that respect for sure. I mean, with Fiziev, he had that one stumbling block in his UFC debut, lost to Magomed Mustafayev. Magomed, where are you at? One of the more fun fighters,
starring in No Country for Old Men 2, perhaps.
Yeah, he does kind of look like Javier Bardem with that haircut. But when you do focus in on this matchup, I didn't think Dos Anjos looked a step slow at all in his last fight. I thought...
I did a little bit.
He looked a day late and $1 short against Paul Felder, and it was a close fight. Everybody thought RDA won except for one of the judges, which was a little weird. And even Felder kind of conceded the fact that, yeah, RDA did win that one. But when you focus on 5-round atmosphere, you focus on the fact that cardio was there for RDA, the striking was there. Do I think he's going to strike with Fiziev? No, but I think he's going to try and wear at those energy systems, work in his own wrestling. And when Dos Anjos takes on guys that are lesser wrestlers than he is, and that's not to say that Fiziev isn't, it's just 2 different systems. The takedown defense of Fiziev is great. RDA is going to be that guy that's really going to test that, and I know that RDA's energy, even close to 38 years old, is still there. So again, we both had Fiziev the first time. I was swayed by the Felder fight and the inactivity from Dos Anjos, but I'm going with Dos Anjos now. I think at, a plus 170, why not go for a shot at the underdog when he has those intangibles, the championship experience, so much 5-round experience. I can't wait for the fight, though, because if Fiziev goes out there and baits him into a fight like the Eddie Alvarez fight, I mean, RDA's going out early and quick.
But I don't even think he has to bait him into it. Like, if Fiziev defends 2 takedowns, RDA will strike with him, because that's what RDA does. He doesn't just chain his wrestling together. It's, I strike, and then I go for the takedown. I strike, and then I go for the takedown. The problem is, there's a lot of periods where he strikes in his fights, even if he is the superior wrestler in the matchup. And I think Fiziev can really make guys pay for going for their own takedown attempts. You're almost making his job easier by initiating the clinches, and initiating a lot of the engagements anyways for Fiziev, and I think he's the much more heavy-handed fighter at this stage of their careers. Again, Prime RDA blows the doors off Rafael Fiziev, but I just think at this stage of his career, Fiziev is the future.
Split on the half-file Rafaels. I'm going with the former champ, Rafael dos Anjos. Matt going with Ataman. Rafael Fiziev. Matt, 10-1 last week with the UFC 276. Obviously, the no contest for Sean O'Malley and Pedro Munoz. That's just off by the wayside. But when we look at this weekend's matchups, we have question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims. It's here on the channel. Then you move forward. Brian Ortega's got another main event after that. That's pretty exciting stuff. The next big-time UFC pay-per-view card is another big one. So the summer continues to roll with Fight Night picks. If you're not already checking it out, we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for the audio version. Every week people go, geez, it'd be great if you had a podcast. And it's been out there for a lengthy amount of time. So go over there, rate and review, toss a like, because that really does help out the videos and help grow the channel. We certainly appreciate all of your feedback and all of the comments down in the comment section. Try our best to get to those. So listen, enjoy the fights coming up this week. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say,
let's get into it.